we're moving on to a segment we like to call Whispers of the White Lotus. In this segment,
Ooh.
we look deeper at some of the hidden narratives we get in the series and discuss them further. This week, we want to discuss the detail about the avatars being typically told their destiny at 16 versus how Aang finds out at 12. Kate, why do you think this is an important bit for the narrative for us to discuss?
I think it's very interesting to show that, like, it's a good emphasis on that he is too young to be knowing all this. And they didn't want to put him in this position. But in times of war, these kind of things happen. It reminds me in real life a little bit about Queen Elizabeth and how she came in to rule very young. And it was out of necessity. I think
Mhm.
World War I, World War II was starting. I'm not a historian, putting that out there. I just watched The Crown. That's it. But
Fair.
I know she came into power like very young, and she had to, um, you know, woman up very fast. She had to get educated very fast, and a lot of it was duty to her country. And that kind of reminds me of, I can't believe I'm comparing Aang and Queen Elizabeth, but
Incredible.
never thought I would say that in my life.
It's
Just
so
saying.
good.
But it does remind me of that. There
Yeah.
is that, like he's too young to be in power. It's not supposed to happen. They are supposed to wait till he's 16, but his life got interrupted because this war interrupted everything.
Yeah.
He's given this massive amount of responsibility way too early on, and he's a kid. He's 12 years old.
Yeah, it's also I really hadn't the Queen Elizabeth comparison is good because it made me think about probably the more direct, I guess, line of thinking that I pull from, and the fact that like in older elden times, whenever you would have like kings and queens all over the place and like
Mhm.
rulers, and like if their parents died young and they were next in line for the throne, if they were not of age, they were king or queen regent. Like wow, and
Mhm.
like they had whoever that was like
Or like the
actually
hand
like
of the king or something was
yeah, like they
ruling.
had an adult who was the actual like ruler up until they came of age to then take responsibility of the thing because they're like, hey, this is a kid still. Like
Yeah,
they
this
probably
is a
shouldn't be
baby.
like actually ruling the kingdom. They're 13. Like maybe we
Yeah.
should wait a little bit.
Didn't that
And so I
happen in Okay, again, this is for the historians watching this. I'm
mhm.
pretty sure there was a ruler who was
Who did become like take it
who
really
was like
young
13.
and was like terrible probably. I mean, I'm sure
Terrible.
that's happened like
Yeah.
a lot of times in history.
I think,
But
yeah.
yeah, it's
Again, I'm not
like
a historian. I'm an Avatar The Last Airbender fan.
yeah, it's but I mean, it makes sense. It's also interesting though because in of the avatars that we've seen and that we know of, more of them than not, at least that we know of by name, more of them
Yeah,
than not have learned that younger than 16. I think
then they
actually it might
should
be
have.
even because I know there's Aang, Korra, and Kyoshi. I'll find out whenever they're well below 16.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about Yang Chen. I still need to finish reading those books, but I
I haven't read them.
think
I got to get on that too. Yeah.
yeah, I need to get to them. I've heard they're really good. I saw a tweet the other day that was talking about something that happened in them, and I'm like, oh, I'm so mad. I just got spoiled for that, but I need to read them. It's fine.
But it's been
Um,
out for a while.
but so I'll give the benefit of the doubt and say that probably Yang Chen didn't know until she
Mhm.
was 16. That seems accurate. And Roku
I think probably
also,
Roku too. It's like a more traditional, they went
yeah,
the more traditional route.
which is it's
And
really
Karuk too.
interesting. Karuk, I'm not sure about. I don't know if
I'm not sure about it
they
either.
get into it actually whenever he finds out, but he also dies super young because he's just
He
irresponsible in
does.
general.
Yeah.
Like he's
Love
just
him.
he's the little playboy dude who just like he should not have been
Mhm.
Avatar, but he
But then
does a
Cora
good
finds
amount.
out early
Korra
just
knows like immediately.
because she's just good at it.
Yeah, she
Like
just
her
is like I
powers.
can. She could
She's
like I
like, I
could
could
do
do
this.
this. Not for
Yeah.
any, there's no war. There's no specific reason. Like she's just like, oh, I could do all this.
She's like 8 years old and can bend all of the elements already.
I can
I'm
bend
like,
all
all
the
right,
elements. You're like,
cool.
damn.
I guess
All
sure.
right.
Go off, Cora. So yeah, I think it's really interesting that most of the ones that we've seen, at least the ones that we've really like spent time with, have found out that they are the Avatar significantly younger. And it
Hmm.
also, I think, has impacted all of them in like it sent them in much different trajectories. Like
Hmm.
angrily, like Aang also is again very different. Like as you mentioned, he is in the middle of a war, like a
Hmm.
100-year war, whenever he like
Hmm.
really has to deal with the fact that he's the Avatar. But
Yeah.
right before
Like when
that, like
he's
whenever he
young, though, it's just starting, but they're like, I think they mention at some point, they're like, the Fire Nation is getting more powerful.
Mhm.
We have to tell him now. Like, we need to start training him now because this is,
'Cause we need the Avatar,
yeah,
like,
this is going to become a problem.
which makes sense, and it's also it's so interesting that he really, like, is struggling with that because, yeah, I can't imagine being told at 12 years old that, like,
The
"Hey,
fate of
you're
the world
supposed to
depends on
help."
me.
Yeah, like, "You're supposed to help balance the entire world and make sure things are fine." I'd be like, "Okay. Hey, man, can I finish puberty first?" Like,
Can I finish puberty
"Thanks."
first? I'm
Like,
dealing with pimples right now. I don't want
yeah, like,
this.
"Come
Like,
on, dude. I don't need all of this. You're telling me I gotta bend all the other elements too? I, like, just got through airbending, man." Like,
yeah.
um, yeah, it's super interesting, and he's just given so much responsibility so young, and then is literally put on ice for 100 years, and then has to come
Oh,
out and, like, and, like, have
sorry.
even more responsibility on top of, like, not only is he the Avatar, but the world is severely damaged in his absence, and, like, he
I could
feels
not
that.
imagine putting the fate of the world in a 12-year-old's hands these days.
Absolutely not.
Especially after hearing about all the 12-year-old Sephora kids.
Yeah, it's
Imagine the fate of the world in their hands.
like, at least for the Avatar world, it's a very different, like, a more, like, they're foragers mostly. Technology is not
Yeah.
really, going out of control or whatever, but, like,
Hmm.
yeah, that's wild. I think it's interesting. So I guess the reason, because one of the things that we want to talk about with this was like why that would be a rule in the first place. I think we
Yeah.
pretty much answered that in the fact that, like, well, because no 12-year-old or like under 16 is even still pretty young to be telling someone
Yeah.
that, like, you're not going to be ready for that level of responsibility. Like, you can't grasp that in its entirety. Like, there's a
Hmm.
reason it takes Aang like, as long, like, the whole show to, like, get to
Hmm.
the point that he
Grasp
needs to
that.
be,
Yeah.
like, as the Avatar. And even Korra, who, like, is way more in a she's in a way healthier environment and way more like assured of herself in being
Hmm.
the Avatar, and she still is not really ready for the actual, like, responsibilities of that
Yeah.
whenever, like, push comes to shove, and, like, she needs to start, like, doing things as the Avatar. Like, it still takes her, that whole series to, like, really get
Mhm.
to the point where, like, she needs to be to, like, complete her Avatar journey for,
Yeah.
like, to
And
do
I
that.
mean, it would also be a boring story if our character was fully
Just
realized and amazing
ready.
at the beginning. And I think the
Yeah,
only way that works is there are some
shortchanging
and
them.
there's some animes that kind of play on that are funny. There's an anime called One Punch Man where he's
Yeah, where
just
he just,
super
like,
overpowered and he just defeats everyone
every
immediately. And
mhm,
it's used as a comedy bit and like it works in that
yeah,
context, but you
but
can
you can't.
only you'd have to make the whole show about that.
Yeah, exactly, you can't have the typical, like, hero's journey growth arc thing that you do
Yes.
with that, right?
Hmm.
Which is interesting, and then, yeah, like, Kiyoshi is another example who found out when she was super young, like, I think she's, like, 9 or 10 maybe when she finds out, which is, fat and also an orphan.
Oh
Yeah,
dear.
it's wild, and, like,
See,
that
yeah, I don't know
really.
about her, so I want to hear you talk about this.
Yeah, so, like, she is they're trying to test, like, who the next Avatar is, and they're going, like, island to island and, like, just testing children, like, they're because they know it's gonna be an earthbender, and so, like, they're
Hmm.
going to different,
Do
like,
they do the
earth.
toys?
Yeah, they do the
The
toys. They,
things?
like,
Okay.
try to get they're, like, they have the toys that, like, one of them is from a past Avatar's life, or, like, however many
Hmm.
there's, like, 3 out of, like, 30 or 40 toys that are on the ground or whatever that, like,
Hmm.
some of these were from past Avatars' lives, and, like, if you're the Avatar, you'll feel the connection and be able to pick them out.
Hmm.
And so, like, that's how Kiyoshi finds out that she's the Avatar, or they find out Kiyoshi's the Avatar.
Hmm.
Um, and hers is interesting because it's a kind of, like, misdirection at first, like, they, like, don't think that she is, and so, like, she gets the defeat of, like, not feeling like she's the Avatar, and then, like, later
Mm.
on, like, comes back and, like, realizes that she is. But it's, again, a thing where she finds out, like, way younger, and also, like, this goes into what we were talking about last episode with the parental thing, where she didn't have, like, she was an orphan growing up, and so that very
Hmm.
much changed her worldview too, and so, like, she views the responsibility of that much differently, and also because the world's not really at, like, war with her, like, it's not in the best place because Karuk was super irresponsible, and so, like, there's not a whole lot of balance in the world at that
Hmm.
time, like, there's a lot more it's not so much that like there's one nation ruling over all of them like the Fire Nation does in Avatar proper, but it's more that just like throughout the nations there's a lot of like corruption going on at different levels that she then has to deal with, and like that's really
Hmm.
her thing that she has to do like as the Avatar. And so it's very interesting that she's like thrust into that younger as well. Um but yeah, it's just a weird like I
It's very
it does
interesting
make sense that
compared.
yeah, and it makes a lot of sense that traditionally, like optimally, like we should be able to wait
Yeah.
until they're
We shouldn't
16 to tell
ruin
them.
these, like cut their childhoods too short.
Yeah, like they should have like it's healthier if the avatar is able to
Hmm.
have a normal childhood before like also having to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
Which makes Roku messing up kind of even more like, hey man, what were you doing? Like the
Yeah.
fact that like you were more traditional in the things and you still like weren't able to stop your friend. Like, come on, man.
It's like I wonder if this would be interesting, like if any of the avatars were to grow up and kind of become a little corrupt.
Yeah.
If they weren't, I think that would be
That's kind of
I
like
don't
you
know if
kind of
does that
get
happen in any of the stories?
yeah,
Any
not
of the comics?
necessarily like not that I know of, and you don't really get it's not the Karuk was like corrupt. He was just
Mm-hmm.
like not fit, essentially, like to
Mm.
be like for that like he just wasn't treating the role with like the
Like being serious. He
respect.
wasn't serious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like he just was like, oh well, this is cool. I can do anything. Like,
Yeah.
and so he was fun about it. You brought up a point the other day before we were talking about this that I
Hmm.
think is interesting. I'd like to expand on in the fact that if they do, like in the instances where they are able to wait the 16 years before telling someone that they're the avatar, the world doesn't have an avatar for 16 years, which
Hmm.
is wild.
Like
Like,
smart on the Fire Nation to attack during that time, but I think they
yeah.
started when Roku was super old, or
Hmm.
when he was. How did he die? That was a fight. Do we know?
I think now you got me blanking because I know we get it to it in the show.
Oh, from isn't he fighting the volcano?
Yeah.
I think that's how he died. But they started that at a very
Yeah.
smart time.
They were like, okay,
That
well, we
worked out
got
very
time
well.
because
Like
they're
that is
not
a good
supposed
time
to
to
like,
invade.
yeah, because they're like, well, we got 16 years optimally before they like, the next
Yeah.
avatar is like of age to do something against
And
us.
still it'd be a young avatar who's
Hmm.
inexperienced.
Yeah, but yeah, it's an interesting thing where like in an optimal world for them, there is going to be a 16-year window where the avatar is not doing stuff. Like
Not
that's such
there.
a weird
Like that's
thing
uneasy.
to have.
That causes unrest.
Yeah, like that's a very weird thing to have baked into your like world cycle.
Like imagine we can only have a president every 16 years.
16 years. Like we got to take a break for
We
a
gotta
little
take a
bit
break.
while the next one. Yeah, that's wild. Which I mean, I
We
guess
wait
is
for the
why the
next one.
Avatar's like not supposed to be a political leader either. Like
Yeah.
they're supposed to
Oh,
like
I
keep the
forgot that that is
political.
talked about. Yeah.
Yeah, like the whole thing is that they're supposed to keep the political leaders in check. Like that's like
Hmm.
along with the spirit world stuff, which is like, and they get more of it into it in Korra. I love Korra so much. I love that show. It's
Hell
we'll
yeah.
get there eventually. But like that's one of the
Yeah.
big things is that they're supposed to like be there to put a limit on that and a like
Yeah.
cap on that, which makes a lot of sense.
It does.
But
And our world really needs that right now.
okay, where's the Avatar when we needed
Where
him
is
most? He
we need an
vanished.
avatar? He vanished.
Come on.
The world needed him most. He didn't exist. Hey, Aspect listener. Enjoying the show?
Then be sure to subscribe here on The Aspect so you never miss an episode.
And check out more episodes and clips on our playlist here.
Thanks so much for watching, and
Lamio Hot Man.